"Ma'am, step away from the gate to our trespassing." The deputy's voice cut through the night, steady but unyielding, as his squad car's flashing lights bathed Karen's face in a stark dance of red and blue. She stood by my stable door, clinging to the leash of my Australian shepherd, Buddy, who was barking his head off, sensing the chaos. Karen looked rattled, but dug in her heels. "I'm with the HOA," she snapped, voice shrill. Someone had to check if these animals were dangerous. The officer didn't blink. "You climbed a locked fence, broke into private property, and you're not animal control. You're under arrest for trespassing and unlawful entry." Her eyes went wide as he stepped forward, reciting her rights. But then came the moment that froze my blood. Karen's next words hit like a gut punch. "They're violent." I was going to put them down myself, if no one else would. The small crowd gasped. My heart sank. Put them down. Was this her twisted plan all along? I stood there, stunned, as the officer cuffed her, but the way she glared back at me from the cruiser said this fight was far from over. "Hey, I'm Jackson Carter, a 38-year-old ex-military guy who craved peace after years of active duty. I moved to a ten-acre ranch just outside Cedar Springs, Texas, dreaming of raising horses, growing crops, and adopting a few animals to live free. No noisy neighbors, no city madness. I thought I'd left drama behind. Instead, I walked straight into a nightmare, an HOA from hell, led by Karen Morgan, 62, divorced, platinum hair, always squinting like she smelled something rotten, and a reputation for trouble. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you have any confrontation with an HOA. We will narrate your story on our channel. Terrorizing anyone who didn't follow her made-up rules. She'd call the city over your grass, being too enthusiastic. Once she fined an elderly man because his garden gnome didn't match the community aesthetic. She literally ran someone out of the neighborhood over a mailbox, so when I bought the land I specifically checked to make sure it wasn't under any HOA jurisdiction. It wasn't, or so I thought. The first few weeks were blissful. My dogs ran free. My horses got used to their new barn. I even started teaching a few troubled teens from town how to ride horses. As part of a local outreach program, one of them, Mason, a quiet 15-year-old with shaggy hair and a heart full of questions, became like a little brother to me. His mom worked 2 jobs, and he said the ranch was the only place he could breathe. Then came the first note, folded neatly and left in my mailbox. "The barking is a nuisance to the community. Please silence your pets between 7 o'clock p.m. and 7 a.m. HOA. Regulation 4.6b. There was no signature, just an HOA logo. I stared at it, confused. I wasn't under any HOA. My ranch was fenced off, gated, and clearly outside the boundary line, so I ignored it. Then came the fines, then the threats. Then Karen herself. She came banging on my front gate one morning at 8 o'clock a.m., dressed like she was heading to a tennis match and holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "I'm here for the pet inspection," she announced. I looked at her through the security camera and buzzed the intercom. Your dogs are too aggressive." They barked at my niece while she jogged past the fence. "They're dogs, that's what they do also. This isn't your jurisdiction." She glared at the camera. "We'll see about that." I thought she'd give up. When I stood my ground, I thought she'd go bother someone else. I was wrong. She started showing up near my property line, taking pictures, recording videos. Once I caught her holding up a measuring tape next to my fence, like she was building a case. Then one afternoon I came home from the feed store and saw something strange. On my driveway, Mason was sitting on the porch, eyes wide. "Jackson," he said quietly. "She was here." I froze. "What do you mean? Who?" "Karen. She climbed the gate when you left. She said she needed to check the dog's behavior personally. I told her she wasn't allowed, but she said she'd call CPS on me if I interfered." I nearly dropped the sack of horse feed. "She was inside the ranch." He nodded. "And she let herself into the dog kennel. She said she wanted to see if Buddy would bite." I was furious, but more than that, I was scared. Buddy was loyal, not violent, but if someone provoked him, she even had a stick. Mason whispered she was poking at him. I checked my security cameras. Sure enough, there she was, climbing the gate like it was a jungle gym, then marching over to the kennels. I immediately called the sheriff. They told me to stay calm. They'd send someone right over, and I had to promise not to take matters into my own hands. When the deputy showed up, he reviewed the footage, whistled, and said, "We've been waiting for something like this. Karen's been warned before, but this is breaking and entering." As we were talking, we heard barking, louder, angrier. We ran to the back and found Karen still there. She'd come back. She had somehow let herself into the ranch again, and this time she was trying to drag my second dog, Blue, by the collar. That's when the officer shouted, "Ma'am, step away from the gate. You're trespassing." And now we're back to where we started. The cuffs, the cries, her screaming about the HOA and how she was just doing her duty. And then the most chilling part, her threat that she'd put them down herself after the arrest. Karen was taken into custody. But that didn't stop the rumors. Some people in the neighborhood said she was right, that my dogs were dangerous. Others defended me. And just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, someone slipped another note under my door. This one didn't have a logo, just 6 words printed in all caps: "We're watching. Chawa is everywhere." I looked up at the ranch lights flickering above my stable and suddenly realized Karen may be in a cell, but the war was just beginning. 3 days after Karen's arrest, I was outside fixing the electric gate she had damaged when it happened. A white SUV with no plates slowly drove past my ranch. It didn't stop, didn't honk, just cruised by with the windows tinted so dark I couldn't see a thing inside. I paused, wiping sweat from my brow, staring down the road. 15 minutes later, it came back again, this time slower. I stepped off the porch, arms folded. The car didn't stop, just rolled past like a shark circling the water. Something didn't feel right. And then, that night, I heard it, a soft clink. The motion light by the barn turned on when I checked the cameras the next morning. I nearly dropped my coffee. Someone had walked up to my barn with a hoodie over their head, yanked open the side gate, looked around, and then walked out. No harm done, no items taken, just watching like they were planning something. And that's when I knew it wasn't just Karen. This went deeper. Let me tell y'all a little more about how this madness began, before the arrest, before the stalking, before I started sleeping with a bat next to my bed. Back in the spring, right after I moved in, I was the happiest I'd been in years. The house was old but sturdy, a true Texas farmhouse with wooden beams and a wide wraparound porch. I had Buddy, my Australian Shepherd, and Blue, my retired canine Belgian Malinois I adopted after he was deemed too gentle for police duty. Those dogs weren't just pets, they were my family. I also had 3 horses: Maple, a gentle old mare; Tank, a playful young stallion, and Copper, a rescue horse, who still flinched when people approached, and the community. It seemed warm at first, at least until Karen introduced herself. The first time I met her, she wasn't even on my property. She was waiting outside the feed store. When I came out, leaned against my truck like she owned it. "You must be the new guy on Oak Hollow," she said, eyes narrowed behind huge sunglasses. "You know we take pride in our neighborhood." I raised a brow. I thought I was out of HOA territory. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, yes and no. Your plot technically borders our community, so we like to make sure everything remains peaceful." It sounded polite, but I could feel the tension under her words. That was the first red flag. I should have trusted my gut. Over the next few weeks, Karen started dropping by, uninvited. One time, she said she heard barking and came to investigate. Another time, she said a local jogger reported loud whinnying and asked if I was overworking my horses. But the worst was when she confronted Mason. He had just finished feeding the chickens when she caught him by the mailbox. "I hope you have permission to be here," she snapped. Mason, bless his heart, stood tall. "Yes, ma'am," Jackson said. "I can come any time." She looked him up and down, clearly not liking what she saw. "Well, that's not good enough. You tell him. The HOA is watching. He told me everything that evening." I was livid, but I still didn't know how deep her obsession ran. After Karen's arrest, I tried to resume normal life. I fixed the gate, replaced the stable locks, installed better cameras. But the paranoia had set in. Mason's mom, Linda, stopped by with a casserole and a warning. She used to be a school administrator. Linda spared. As we sat on the porch, got fired for harassing a kid's parents about a barking puppy. She took them to court, lost, but she's never let it go. I blinked seriously. "Karen is the kind of woman who needs control," Linda said. "If she can't have it, she burns the whole thing down." I believed it, but I didn't realize just how literal that would become. A week later, a fire broke out in my barn. It wasn't massive thanks to the sprinkler system I had installed after a lightning scare, but the corner near the hay bales was scorched black. One of the ladders melted. Buddy had barked like mad, waking me just in time to run out and douse the flames before it spread. The fire chief came by and examined the scene. His words chilled me. "No lightning, no spark from equipment. Jackson, someone lit this." An arson report was filed, but there were no prints, no witnesses, just the same white SUV caught on the corner of my camera, parked a few yards down the road an hour before it started. I knew who it was, I just couldn't prove it. Karen had been released on bail, and now she was silent. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch with Buddy at my feet, shotgun across my lap, watching the driveway like a hawk. And around 2:30 a.m., I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. It wasn't the SUV, it was something worse. A police car. I stood up, heart pounding, thinking maybe they had news, but what the deputy said next made my blood boil. "We received a call from the HOA about alleged animal abuse on your property. We have to check." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Animal abuse? You've seen my animals. You've been here." He looked apologetic, but firm. "I know, but we have to respond." So I led him through the barn, showed him the stalls, the food, the clean water troughs. He even petted Buddy and said, "Y'all are good. Sorry about this." I knew who made the call. Karen. She was trying to get my animals taken away, trying to find any way to destroy me, but I wouldn't let her. I couldn't, not after what I found. The next morning, the sun was just peeking over the treetops when I heard Mason's scream. I sprinted outside, heart racing, to find him standing by the side of the house, pointing at something on The ground, it was a dead squirrel, but not just dead, it had a tiny paper sign tied to its neck. The words were printed with stencils. "The next ones won't be animals." We both stood frozen, staring at it. My stomach turned. The barn, the SUV, the fire. Now this wasn't HOA anymore. This was warfare. I took one look at that sign on the dead squirrel and knew this wasn't just some crazy prank. This was personal. Someone wanted to scare me, to break me, to make me pack up and leave my ranch behind. But I wasn't going anywhere. Not after what I'd built here. Not after all the kindness I'd shared with people like Mason and his mom, who called this place a second home. Not after all the healing I'd found for myself. I took a photo of the message and called the sheriff immediately. 2 deputies showed up within the hour. They examined the animal, bagged the note, and said they'd send it to the crime lab. But the look in Deputy Rowland's eyes said it all. He was worried. "I'll be honest with you, Jackson," he said, lowering his voice. "This isn't normal. We've had trouble with Karen before, but this is escalating. Whoever did this isn't just trying to scare you, they're testing how far they can go." I nodded slowly. "I'm not going to wait until someone gets hurt." That same day, I filed for a restraining order against Karen. It wasn't easy. I had to show video footage, screenshots of messages, police reports, everything I had collected since her first trespass. The county judge said he'd review it within the week, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop her, because Karen wasn't working alone anymore. I didn't know who the others were, but that white SUV wasn't hers, and the typed note that was too calculated to organized. This was no longer just an HOA president on a power trip. This was something bigger, something darker. That weekend, I tried to distract myself. Mason came over, and we worked on patching the east fence line that had been damaged during last week's storm. We laughed a little, even grilled burgers afterward. His smile made it feel like maybe, just maybe, things could go back to normal. But then, on Sunday afternoon, while we were grooming the horses, Blue suddenly growled. Not a bark, a low, deep, rumbling growl that started in his belly and rolled through his chest like thunder. I turned. There was a drone floating silently above the ranch. It hovered near the chicken coop, then slowly glided toward the main house, spinning slightly like it was recording everything. I ran for my rifle. Mason followed behind me. I raised the scope, aimed, and pulled the trigger. Pop! The drone spun, sparked, and dropped like a dying fly. We sprinted to where it landed. It was a black quadcopter, expensive, and right on the side, stenciled in silver, was the word HOA Patrol. I stared at it. Mason looked up at me. "Whitey, they're spying on us." Now I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. They'd always been spying on us. We just finally caught them. I handed the broken drone to the sheriff's department. They promised to check for GPS, data footage, serial numbers, anything. But in the meantime, the ranch no longer felt safe. I bought more locks. I set up motion alarms. I trained Blue and Buddy to alert me to anything moving past the fence. And then, just when I thought I'd fortified every weakness, something happened that shattered me. It was Wednesday. I'd spent the day helping Linda fix a busted pipe in her trailer down the road. When I came back, the ranch was quiet, too quiet. No barking, no neighing, no clucking. I walked toward the kennel, whistling Buddy Blue. Nothing. I ran. When I got to the gate, the latch was open, swung wide. The kennel door was unhinged, like someone had crowbarred it, and the dogs gone. My legs buckled. I dropped to the ground, breath shallow, head spinning. Gone. No sign of blood. No drag marks, no fur, just gone. I called their names until my throat was raw. I searched the woods behind the ranch, flashlight shaking in my hands, still nothing. And then, around midnight, I got a text, unknown number, no words. Just a photo, buddy, chained to a pole somewhere unfamiliar, his eyes wide with fear, and the caption, "Leave the rancher, he dies." My hands shook. I dropped the phone. Mason, who had come to help me search, picked it up and stared at the screen. His eyes watered. Who would do this? I didn't answer, because I already knew Karen and whoever was helping her. They weren't just playing games anymore. This was full-blown blackmail. This was war. I didn't call the sheriff this time. I called someone else, my cousin. Re-ex Special Forces, the guy who taught me how to fight Ray. I said into the phone, voice shaking, "I need you down here. Someone's messing with my animals, and if I don't act fast, I might lose everything." There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice came low and serious. "I'll be there by morning," and I knew everything was about to change. By 7 o'clock a.m. the next morning, a beat-up black truck rolled up to the ranch, covered in desert dust and Texas grit. Out stepped Ray Carter, tall, lean, quiet, and built like a walking storm. Ray was the kind of guy who never needed to raise his voice. You could feel the danger humming under his skin just by looking at him. He gave me a nod, eyes scanning the property. Like a predator, "Where's the war?" I led him inside and showed him the photo of Buddy, the text, the drone, and everything else. He didn't blink once. "We're going to find them," he said, simply sliding a duffel bag onto the couch and unzipping it to reveal gear that shouldn't be in civilian hands. "And when we do, we're going to shut this down the right way." Ray's first move was to check the perimeter. He installed new trail cameras, military ones that even dies I didn't know how to use. He mounted a few high up in trees, others hidden behind fence posts, some with heat sensors. He also planted 2 decoys. One was a fake dog cage with an old leash, and the other was a dummy camera attached to the barn bait. He said, "Let's see if they get cocky." Then he hacked the drone's memory chip, which the sheriff's department had given back after copying the contents. What we found made my stomach turn. The drone had been flying over not just my ranch, but Mason's trailer, Linda's vegetable patch, and even the nearby animal shelter. They were targeting anyone who helped me. Ray narrowed his eyes. "This isn't just harassment. This is psychological warfare." Meanwhile, I filed a missing animal report for both Buddy and Blue, even though I knew exactly who had them. But the law couldn't move without hard proof. Ray and I spent the next 2 days patrolling the ranch, waiting, watching, and on the third night, just past 2 o'clock a.m., one of Ray's cameras sent an alert. We checked the live feed. There she was, Karen, but she wasn't alone. A man in his late 40s, bald, stocky, and wearing a jacket with an old police badge sewn into it, was with her. I didn't recognize him, but Ray did. "Paul Hargrove," he muttered, "disgraced former animal control officer, got fired for extorting ranch owners in El Paso. I met him once during a joint task op." I stared at the screen. Karen and Paul were back by the barn. Karen was holding a flashlight. Paul was holding a leash. A leash. They were going to try again, Ray and I sprinted out the back door, took the long way round the barn, and flanked them in the dark. Just as Paul pulled open the side panel of the barn, I flipped on my flashlight. Step away from the building. They froze. Karen gasped. Paul turned, reaching behind his back. Ray raised his gun. "Don't move." Paul froze. "I'm calling the sheriff." I said, voice trembling. "No need," Ree said with a smirk. "He's already 5 minutes out," because Ray had triggered the silent perimeter alarm the second the camera went off. And I saw now that his plan wasn't just to protect the ranch, it was to trap them. Karen started to cry like she was the victim. "I was trying to rescue the animals," she shouted, shaking. "They're dangerous. They attacked my niece." "That's not true," I snapped. "Your niece was never even on my property. She could hear them bark." Karen screamed. "That's emotional damage. That's violence." Ray and I exchanged looks. She had gone completely off the deep end, and Paul, he just stood there silent until the sheriff pulled up. Deputy Rowland jumped out, hand on his weapon. "Hands where? I can see them." They complied. The moment was tense, quiet, until the deputy opened Paul's duffel bag. Inside were tranquilizers, zip ties, rope, and wire cutters. Ray leaned in and whispered, "They were planning to take them tonight." Karen and Paul were both arrested, but the real shock came the next day when Mason found something under a tree near the western fence. It was a USB stick. Ray plugged it into his laptop. Inside were video files, hours of footage from inside someone's home, surveillance cameras, secret audio conversations between HOA board members. And then we saw it, Karen standing in a room with 5 others. Some we recognized from the community, others we didn't. They were talking openly about taking over the Carter Ranch. One of them even said, "If we get those animals out of there, we can petition to claim a community easement and force a sale." I sat back stunned. This wasn't just Karen acting alone. This was the entire HOA board plotting, scheming, trying to force me off my land to expand their reach. And now we had the proof. Ray nodded slowly. "It's time to expose them." But just before we could contact the sheriff, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a message from a blocked number. "Release the footage, and you'll never see your dogs alive again." Attached was a new photo buddy and blue tied up in what looked like an abandoned trailer, both of them alive, but scared. My blood ran cold. They knew we had the evidence, and now they were going to use my dogs as leverage. I turned to Ray. "They want me to choose between justice and my boys." He looked at me, eyes sharp. "We're not choosing." Then he grabbed his gear. "We're taking them back." The silence in the room was heavy. Ree stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the treeline like a sniper, waiting for movement. I sat at the table, staring at my phone, the photo of Buddy and Blue still on the screen. They looked tired, tied up, scared, but alive, and that was enough to keep me breathing. For now. Ray finally turned. "We don't wait, we hunt." He grabbed the USB stick and tucked it into a fireproof pouch, sealing it tight. "We're going to find that trailer, get your dogs back, and then we're going to burn the HOA's little empire to the ground, legally." I nodded, my hands still trembling. "How do we find them?" Ray pulled out his laptop and loaded the image again. "Let's break it down." We zoomed in. There was a rusted barrel in the background, a faded sign that read Denton Power Storage. Ray grinned. "That's a decommissioned power facility. I passed it on my way in from Route 6. It's about 10 miles out." "We roll now." We took his truck, armed but focused. Our eye was calm like always, but I could feel the heat in his blood. "They never should have brought the dogs into it," he muttered. That's when it stopped being stupid and became warm. The road was rough, long stretches of gravel and dirt. By the time we pulled up to the entrance of the old Denton Power Storage Facility, the sun was setting. Long shadows stretched over the lot, and the whole place looked like a forgotten graveyard of steel and silence. Ray pulled over and killed the engine. We moved on foot. We crept past broken fences and rusted power units until we heard it, a faint whimper, then another, and then bark. It was Buddy. I could recognize that voice anywhere. We sprinted toward the sound, keeping low. Ray signaled me to wait. He pulled out a small mirror on a stick and peeked around the edge of the trailer. Then he turned to me, lips tight. Two men, armed, sitting on lawn chairs, like they're guarding Fort Knox. I clenched my fists. Can we take them? Ray smiled. Watch this. Ray moved fast, so fast the guards never saw it coming. He kicked the first man's chair right out from under him, sending the guy flat on his back before the second could stand. Ray had the man's wrist locked and twisted, disarming him in one move. It took less than 10 seconds. I ran inside the trailer, and there they were, Buddy and Blue, both tied to a post but unharmed. When they saw me, they yelled and wagged their tails so hard the whole trailer shook. I dropped to my knees, tears rushing up behind my eyes. "You're okay," I whispered. "I'm here. I got you." Ree came in and started cutting the ropes. "We leave now, but we're not done." I nodded. We had the USB, we had the location, we had the dogs. Now we needed to go public. We returned to the ranch under cover of night. Linda had stayed behind to watch the place, and Mason ran out when he saw us. "Pull up, Buddy," he cried, hugging the dog around the neck. I thought that he stopped and looked up at me. I thought we lost them. I looked over at Ree. "We're not losing anything else. We've got everything we need." Ray sat at the kitchen table and plugged the USB into his laptop. "We're going to need witnesses, statements, a press contact. You ready to go?" Loud. I took a deep breath. I've never been more ready. The next morning we drove into town and met with Sheriff Douglas. Deputy Roland had already told him everything but once. Ray showed him the footage of the secret HOA meeting, of Karen plotting the board, laughing Paul talking about seizing private land. The sheriff's face darkened. "This changes everything." Douglas said, "You give me this footage officially, and we'll start building the case, but we'll need you to testify. That'll make you a target." I looked at Ray, then at Buddy and Blue, who were curled up at my feet, finally resting peacefully. "I've been a target," I said. "Now I'm a witness." The sheriff nodded. "Good, because this town's about to see a storm coming." That night, we uploaded a copy of the footage to a secure drive. Ray contacted a friend at a small TV station in Dallas, and I made a decision. I posted the first part of the story to Facebook. No drama, just the facts. A single photo of Buddy, the burned barn, and the drone caption, "My animals were kidnapped, my property burned, and it all started because the HOA wanted my land." Here's what really happened within hours. It had 3,000 shares. By morning it was 50,000. And then the phone started ringing. Reporters, activists, other homeowners from across the country who said they did the same thing to me. We were no longer alone. We were part of something bigger. But then the explosion happened just after midnight. Ray and I were walking the fence line when the blast knocked us off our feet. Smoke billowed up from the south end of the ranch near the tool shed. We ran. The shed was gone, flattened, nothing but fire and twisted steel. Mason came flying out of the house. Barefoot, panicked Jackson. "What was that?" We checked everyone, no injuries. But we knew who had done it. Karen, or someone loyal to her. She may have been arrested, but someone was still carrying out her orders. And now they'd brought explosives into it. Ray stared at the rising smoke and whispered, "They're getting desperate." I looked over at him, my face set like stone. "Good. because desperate people make mistakes, and their biggest one was not finishing the job. The fire raged for almost an hour. Ray and I managed to keep it from spreading to the barn, but the tool shed was reduced to ashes. All my ranch tools gone, equipment for the livestock gone. My backup generator melted into the dirt, but what scared me most was how the fire marshal arrived by sunrise, tired eyes, scanning the scene. After digging through the rubble, he pulled something out of the soot, a burned-out gas can, wrapped in what looked like a soaked rag. Someone threw a Molotov. He muttered, "Homemade, dangerous, stupid, but deadly." I just stared at it. This wasn't petty anymore. This was arson. This was terrorism. This was attempted murder. By 10 o'clock a.m., Sheriff Douglas called a press conference. He stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by deputies holding up the same USB Ray had handed him just 24 hours earlier. "We are launching a full-scale investigation into the Cedar Springs Homeowners Association and its board of directors for conspiracy, fraud, unlawful surveillance, animal endangerment, and now arson," he announced. Reporters gasped. People in the crowd muttered. Some clapped. Others, especially the ones in expensive suits, standing off to the side, looked like they'd just seen a ghost. HOA board members. One of them locked eyes with me, then turned and walked away. Good, let them run, because I wasn't not anymore back at the ranch. Mason helped me dig through the rubble for anything salvageable. We found a few melted tools and a scorched horseshoe, but that was it. He looked up at me. "You think they'll stop?" I shook my head. "They've lost too much to stop now." Ray came out of the house, phone in hand. "It's spreading that Facebook post. It's been shared over 400,000 times, and you've got lawyers reaching out from all over the country, Ho. Abuse cases, class action possibilities." I blinked. All I wanted was a quiet life. I muttered, grinned. "Yeah, well, too late now." The sheriff's department worked fast. That evening, they raided the HOA office, confiscated files, computers, boxes full of documents that showed everything from fake fines to backdoor land deals and secret surveillance contracts. Karen's name was on almost every page. She was still in county jail, but now her charges had doubled. Deputy Rowland visited that night, sat at my kitchen table and said, "She won't be seeing the outside world anytime soon, probably facing 15 to 20 years. Minimum." I finally exhaled, but it wasn't over, because that night the phone rang. Again, unknown number. Ray picked up. A gruff voice came through. "You think you're heroes. You embarrassed some powerful people. The USB was just the tip of the iceberg. You don't know what you're messing with." Then the line cut. Ray stared at the phone, then looked at me. "They've got someone higher up, maybe in city government, maybe even state, someone who backed this whole thing." I nodded slowly, and then I remembered the words on the squirrel sign. "The next ones won't be animals." They hadn't forgotten, and they weren't done. Needed had been digging through the recovered HOA footage when he paused a video and shouted, "Jackson, come here." I rushed over. He pointed to a blurry man in the corner of the meeting room, never speaking, just listening. "That's Ben Langston," Ray whispered. "City Zoning Board. He's the one who approved the last 3 HOA expansion permits." I frowned. Why would he be in an HOA meeting? Ray pulled up another clip. Same man, this time signing documents, smiling. Then another, and another. Each one showed Langston acting more like a member of the HOA than a city official. Then we saw it. A document zoomed in, titled Land Reclamation Agreement for Oak Hollow Phase 3, with Langston's signature and Karen's at the bottom. It was dated 6 weeks before. My barn was set on fire. Ray stared at me. This was never about the dogs. It was always about your land. We contacted the news station in Dallas, sent them everything within 48 hours. The story aired on national television. Texas HOA tied to city zoning official in land theft and arson conspiracy. Langston was arrested the next day. The mayor made a public apology and dissolved the HOA's legal charter. Karen was transferred to a federal facility, and every board member who attended those meetings indicted the town of Cedar Springs, lit up like a firestorm. Neighbors protesting, HOA victims speaking out, people demanding oversight. They tried to bury me, but they planted a seed instead. It should have felt like victory, and in a way, it was. But just when we began repairing the shed and planning the ranch's recovery, a letter arrived. No return address, just typed words on paper. You think it's over, but there's always another board, another Karen, another Langston. Watch your back. You embarrassed too many people to walk away. Clean Ray stared at the note for a long time. Then he folded it and tossed it into the fire pit. We're not hiding. We're building something stronger. Let them come. I smiled for the first time in weeks, because for the first time in months, the dogs were safe. The barn was standing. The town was awake, and I wasn't just a rancher anymore. I was a survivor. Spring came late that year. The fields bloomed slower. The morning air still had a bite, but something had shifted, not just in the weather, but in Cedar Springs itself. For the first time since Swenza moved out here, my ranch was quiet in a good way, peaceful. No SUVs circling, no drones buzzing, no HOA officers pretending to be concerned citizens while plotting behind my back. Just birds chirping, Blue napping under the porch, and Buddy chasing squirrels like he owned the place again. But even in the calm, I knew we had one final hill to climb: the courtroom. The town's old courthouse was packed the day of the trial. Karen Morgan, dressed in a wrinkled gray suit and shackles, sat at the defense table with her lawyer, some stiff city guy who looked like he regretted taking the case. Across from her sat Ben Langston, the disgraced zoning officer, face pale, sweating through his collar. The prosecution played every clip we found on the USB, the threats, the secret meetings, the line about seizing the Carter Ranch before summer, and when they played Karen's voice from her jail call saying, "I don't care what it takes, burn it all down if we have to." There was a murmur across the courtroom. The jury didn't even take 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit arson, attempted animal cruelty, unlawful entry, abuse of office. Karen didn't flinch when the sentence was read. 25 years, no parole. Langston got 10. The rest of the board took plea deals, and just like that, the HOA that had nearly destroyed my life was no more. I walked out of the courthouse, son Mason and his mom behind me, Ray at my side. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. But I didn't stop to answer. I just turned to Ray and smiled. "You know what this means?" He nodded. "You finally get your ranch back." And that's exactly what I did. We rebuilt the shed stronger, this time with brick siding and a storm-proof roof. Linda's garden bloomed again, and I installed a proper riding trail where the old broken fence used to be. Mason started a summer program teaching other teens how to ride horses, and Buddy, he got fat from all the treats the neighborhood kids gave him. People drove out from town just to walk around the property, meet the animals, and hear the story firsthand. We renamed it Freedom Ranch because that's what it represented. Now, freedom from corruption, freedom from fear, Freedom from people like Karen, who thought power meant control, and just when I thought the chapter was fully closed, something surprising happened. I got a letter, a real letter, not a threat or a warning. This one was handwritten. Neat cursive. It was from Karen's niece. Yes, the same. Niece Karen had lied about all those months ago. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Carter, I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything my aunt put you through. She claimed your dogs attacked me, but I've never even been near your property. I didn't agree with anything she did, and when I found out she was using my name to get her way, I felt sick. I hope one day people stop using fear to feel important. Thank you for standing up, not just for your land, but for people like me, people who never asked to be part of her games." Allison, I read it 3 times before folding it and tucking it into a frame beside a photo of Blue Buddy and Tank in the pasture. It reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. Through all the chaos, this fight wasn't just about land. It was about kindness, about standing up when it would have been easier to walk away, about protecting the voiceless whether they walked on 2 legs or for the next season. I was invited to speak at a homeowners' rights conference in Dallas. I stood in front of a small crowd, some in jeans, others in business suits, and told them my story. Every chapter, every scare, every fight, and at the end I said, never let anyone tell you that kindness is weakness, that protecting what's yours is selfish, or that following rules means letting people walk all over you, because good people, kind people, have limits too, and when they reach them, you better believe they'll fight. The crowd stood and clapped, not for me, but for every homeowner who'd been bullied, for every family forced to move, for every pet wrongly taken, for every ranch nearly stolen. We'd all had enough, and this time we weren't backing down. So to everyone listening, whether you're in a big city or a small town, whether you live in a suburban home, an apartment, or on a quiet little ranch like mine, keep your head up, protect your peace, and if an HOA Karen ever tries to take what's yours, just remember, the fence might keep the animals in, but it sure as heck won't keep us out.